Hello, this is Dr. B. I appreciate you stopping by. Stand by. Let's get to it.
Chapter 8. Being Smart. 12 Do's and Don'ts. I may have my faults, but being wrong ain't one of them. Jimmy Hoffa. An elderly man was at home, dying in his bed. Lying there, he noticed the aroma of his favorite cookies baking in the kitchen. The old gentleman wanted one last chocolate chip cookie before he died. He rolled out of the bed, crawled to the landing, and slid down the stairs. Then he crawled into the kitchen where his wife was busy baking the cookies. With little strength left, he pulled himself up to the table and was just able to lift his feeble hand to the cookie plate. He reached for one last warm, moist chocolate chip cookie, his favorite. Suddenly his wife turned and whacked his hand with the spatula. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did you do that?" She replied, "They're for the funeral." Sometimes the best revenge is to survive. Surviving the teen years should be the goal of any parent. The glories of adolescence just don't exist for most families. A parent's goal of survival should be combined with helping their teenager through those intense years. Hoping for the teen years to be a glorious experience, or even to go smoothly, is an unrealistic expectation. Expecting calm will set both parents and teenagers up for a lot of disappointment. Surviving the teen years involves recognizing them for what they are with a good sense of humor, reasonable expectations, and a battle plan. That battle plan should include 12 do's and don'ts for raising teenagers. Number 1. Do talk. Since teenagers see themselves as becoming adults, there is a very strong need to feel respected. Part of showing respect is taking the time to talk with them. That is, when they want to talk. They appreciate feeling that the conversation is on equal ground where both people are respected and given their chance to express themselves. Respect includes the tone of voice used when sharing, eye contact, and appropriate body language. There are also times when an adolescent needs to be talked to, but doesn't necessarily want to listen. Talk to them anyway. Keep the conversation short and to the point. Then move on. This approach is especially appropriate for giving warnings or consequences. Don't preach or repeat. Preaching involves talking down to another person without them having any opportunity to respond. Sometimes they don't even have time to think. Preaching has an air of arrogance, control, and criticism. It is often done by saying the same thing over and over. Repeating is perceived by a teenager as nagging, or insulting their intelligence, as if they didn't hear the first time. If you are talking to your teenager about some misbehavior and the resulting consequence, tell them once, then give the consequence. Don't bother giving long-winded repeated lectures or explanations. This approach causes more problems. Tongue lashings create problems by demeaning those on the receiving end. Resentment is the result. Adolescents tend to express their resentment through anger and revenge. When there is a pattern of lecturing, teenagers are likely to tune you out, and you may inspire more rebellion than correction. Number 2. Do listen. Part of a teenager's need for respect and their self-perception of being an adult make them want to be heard. As parents, we need to try to see things from the point of view of our teenagers. That doesn't mean that we always have to agree, or that we always have to go along with what they want. However, we should do our best to let them know that they are being listened to, and that we've taken their views into account. Being calm, maintaining eye contact, and being attentive should be part of listening. This approach puts us in a much better position for influencing our children, or if need be, to correct them. Parents will also find that there will be times when an adolescent's viewpoint is valid and should be acted on. Better listening allows a parent to be fair to their teen. A child who feels heard and treated fairly is less likely to have the need to act out or sneak behind your back. Don't be uninterested or too busy. Teenagers are smart. They will notice very quickly whether or not they are important enough for us to take time for them, and whether or not we respect them enough to hear them out. Once again, this doesn't mean that a parent has to agree, but it does imply the need to take the time to listen. Teenagers are often into revenge and power. If they don't feel respected and important, they will do something to disrespect a parent in return. Sometimes this will be a blatant, in-your-face act, but at other times it will be subtle and behind your back. A short time of paying attention now could head off a lot of problems and the effort to correct them later. An uninvolved parent is an adult who is poised to be surprised. Number 3. Do be honest. Teenagers are tuned into the concept of fairness. They are ever observing to see whether our treatment of them is fair or unfair. Unfortunately, they will often misinterpret situations. Adolescents can see unfairness in situations that are actually fair. Often the word no is translated as unfair. This is a topic covered in the last chapter. Teenagers tend to want to see justice and equality. That means that if parents lie to them, a poor example is set and an adolescent feels they have permission to use deceit themselves. Being honest and consistent avoids inspiring revenge. Justification for revenge is easily rationalized when they perceive a parent's deception. This is the way teens think. When we are frank about the mistakes that we make, it is more difficult for them to practice denial and give themselves license not to be honest with us about things they have done. However, being honest doesn't mean that a parent needs to share every detail of each of their failings in life. However, it does mean that as things happen that involve a teenager, parents need to be open with them to the degree that is appropriate to share. Sharing should be done at a level that they can understand. There are fewer problems when an adolescent feels considered and included. Don't lie or make promises you can't keep. Don't cover up mistakes and don't say things that you can't follow through with. Unfulfilled promises and setting a bad example only give a teenager excuses for rebellion. That momentary relief, experienced by avoiding the truth, isn't worth the price a parent and their child will pay later. Making a promise that you can't fulfill doesn't balance out the trouble that you will cause on the other end. A teenager will eventually see the truth. They will be hurt and disappointed because you didn't do what you promised to do. Being treated unfairly and feeling disrespected comes with a price. Adolescents are keen on such matters. Lack of keeping promises and inconsistency also applies to discipline. A parent who doesn't follow through with consequences has lied to their child. Such a parent loses a teenager's respect. As a result, they give up some of their authority and encourage more conflict. Parents shouldn't expect an adolescent to listen to a parent who doesn't mean what they say. Number 4. Do admit when you make mistakes. Children aren't the only ones who make mistakes. Parents make mistakes as well. Some parents have difficulty admitting it when they are wrong or saying that they're sorry. This is an error that comes with a cost. However, those parents who take personal responsibility and admit mistakes put themselves in a position to teach some valuable lessons. First of all, a parent taking responsibility teaches a child to take responsibility for their choices. By modeling this positive behavior, a parent encourages the same in their child. Admitting mistakes sends the message that everyone makes mistakes from time to time, and that it is okay to own up to errors. When parents make mistakes, not only should they admit it, but they should apologize for what was done and talk about what should have been done instead. Parents should also take responsibility to make restitution and repair the damage done by making a mistake whenever possible. Mistakes that parents make range anywhere from breaking a promise to not following through with discipline to punishing a child for something that they did not do. When owning up to mistakes, parents show their children that they are not being prideful or lying. By taking personal responsibility, parents show how much they love and respect their children, even to the point of admitting wrongs and trying to correct them. Don't deny, hide, or cover up wrongs. Since mistakes are common, it would be silly to think that how we handle those mistakes won't impact our children. Children don't miss noticing when parents attempt to avoid taking personal responsibility for wrongs. Remember that children tend to reproduce what they witness. If we as parents cover up, deny, or otherwise try to hide our errors, we give license to our children to do the same. When kids are directly affected by mistakes that we make, we cause unreasonable hurt and pain. Confusion is a common side effect as well. A child may experience sadness, anger, or resentment. Many children will act out these feelings in a negative manner. By not taking personal responsibility, parents teach their children not to admit their own wrongs and actually encourage sneakiness. For a teenager, such a situation makes it particularly easy to rationalize their inappropriate behavior. They are tuned into fairness and being treated with respect. Given an easy excuse, they can rebel and act out vengefully. Parents are their children's primary role model. Not admitting wrongs, saying "I'm sorry," and making amends sets a poor example and tells our children to do the same. Number 5. Do accept their individuality and search for identity. A child needs to get in touch with their unique gifts, abilities, and personality. The teen years are a time of confusion and searching for who they are. It is hoped that their identity has been largely defined in those early childhood years and positively groomed through good parenting. A firm childhood foundation tends to help the search for who they are and keep the confusion to a minimum once kids are in their teens. However, a teenager still has the need to express and sharpen that individuality and their own identity. Support them as they discover themselves, that is, their likes and dislikes, gifts and abilities. Encourage maturity and taking calculated risks. A successful person is one who recognizes who they are and applies this knowledge to life. Don't compare them. Don't compare your teenager to others or force them to be who they are not. If a parent wants to stir some anger and resentment for their child, all they need to do is compare them to a brother or a sister or someone down the street. What an adolescent hears by the comparison is, "You're not good enough, and I see this other child as better than you." The goal of the parent might be to motivate their teen to do better, but instead they can create the opposite. The teenager will hear this comparison, become frustrated and angry, and then say to themselves, "Well, if this is how you think I am, I'll make it true. I'll show you." Then they will often go in the opposite direction of where the parent wants them to go. They will choose to do what the parent doesn't want. Negative qualities will become magnified. Remember, teenagers are tuned into criticism and control. When they feel we are trying to control them, especially through criticism, they will often work to show they are angry and won't be controlled. Keep in mind that a teenager is confused and insecure, and by comparing them to others, parents only feed that sense of insecurity and damage their relationship with their child. Number 6. Do convey how important they are. In spite of our children's behavior, we need to let them know that they are loved. This means unconditionally. We should mentally separate our child from their behavior, loving the child and sometimes hating the behavior. But we should always express our love for them. This need applies even when they are being given and serving consequences for misbehavior. While a teenager may not acknowledge their need for love and consideration, they still want it and they still need it. The child who is loved and knows that they are loved can handle more of the challenges which life gives them. They can also take a lot more correction and will create fewer problems for parents than a child who doesn't feel loved. Be sure to show your unconditional love for your child in 2 ways. Tell them that you love them and show them your love through your actions. Don't act as if they owe you something. Children didn't ask to be brought into the world. That was a decision we, their parents, either made willfully or by default. Adolescents usually don't tend to think about owing their parents or repaying them anyway. This appreciation usually comes later in life. What they do believe is that it is the parents' responsibility to provide for them. So when we do special things for our kids, we shouldn't expect that they are automatically going to be good for the next 4 weeks. Hope for appreciation, but don't be surprised if you don't get it. However, don't hesitate to point out the need for appreciation. Taking them to the mall or Disney World won't guarantee cooperation. In fact, many times what we can expect is that they are actually going to act badly after doing something special. Special events tend to create overstimulation, fatigue, or inspire attempts at independence. Once a child returns home, they test the boundaries to reassure themselves of their security. If we hold to the expectation that our kids owe us something, we will usually be very disappointed. For the times it does happen, make a note of it. Special privileges and good parenting don't result in perfect behavior. Being realistic with expectations is needed to avoid disappointment. Number 7. Do maintain the generation gap. Being a parent means being in a position of authority. We can still be a friend and an authority to our child without giving up our compassion and responsibilities. The teen years are not a time to try to be a buddy to a child. A buddy is someone who gives them support, but also looks the other way when an adolescent is doing something that is self-destructive or outright wrong. Buddies hesitate to say things that need to be said for fear of reprisal or hurting feelings. Teenagers don't have respect for parents who try to be buddies. They see them as ineffective and easily manipulated. While there may be moments of fun, there are also times of disrespect. Parents dare not relinquish over power during these trying years because the possibility of horrible consequences is ever present. Someone needs to be in charge. Don't try to be a buddy. Love and respect your kids, but don't get hung up on worrying about whether they dislike you or not. Children need to maintain respect for their parents and the recognition of their authority. A parent can be a friend to their teenager and stay in their parental role. Lessons learned about the respect of authority and those who hold it will pay dividends in the future. The exercise of parental authority should last until teenagers are out on their own. Once a child is no longer a child, the relationship with a parent changes. At that point, parents can offer counsel rather than control and be more of a buddy. Number 8. Do be predictable. Be consistent in dealing with your teenager. This supports your authority as a parent and also avoids giving them the idea that you are being unfair. Seeming unfair is a byproduct of being inconsistent. Parents need to discipline their children in a consistent manner and need to show respect and love for them in a consistent fashion. A child shouldn't have to guess what the expectations are or what the price will be for their misbehavior. Expectations for adolescents should not change from day to day or situation to situation. Let them know what is expected of them and follow through with pleasant or unpleasant consequences. Consequences should match the quality of their choices. A child's sense of security involves our predictability. Don't be inconsistent. Inconsistency only feeds the fires of rebellion that naturally burns in the bellies of our teenagers. Inconsistency implies weakness or being uncaring. Weakness includes being seen as undependable. The thought that parents can't be trusted can be fueled by inconsistency. It also tears away at a child's belief that the family situation is stable. Consistency translates into stability, and stability into security. Teenagers still want to know the home is secure and the family stable, even when they seem preoccupied with doing other things. Number 9. Do establish fair rules. Remember that rules without relationship result in rebellion. Children need rules to guide them and improve their behavior. Establishing clear rules also avoids teens having to guess what the rules are or assume there are no rules at all. This clarity in turn avoids confusion, anger, and anxiety. Clear and fair rules allow them to focus on other matters they need to be attending to by avoiding the distraction of constantly having to test for boundaries. Rules are a necessary evil. Without them, chaos is bred, along with accompanying failures and frustration. Rules should be fair and reasonable. Teenagers will react against what they consider as unfair regulations. The fairer and simpler rules are, the better. Don't make more rules than needed. Don't get picky about matters that are really unimportant. Leaving a light on in the kitchen is not a big deal. Don't make it one. Breaking curfew is a big deal. Don't ignore it. Pick your battles. A parent only has so much time and energy. Remember, the object for parents is to win the war, not to fight as many battles as possible. Winning the war is to raise a healthy child. Don't waste your energy on things that really don't matter. Don't get worn out over trivial issues. Use as few rules as you can get by with and enforce them. Number 10. Do expect rules to be tested. Keep in mind that adolescence is the transition time between childhood and adulthood. A teenager is experimenting with making their own decisions and flexing their muscles of independence. They need to be guided so that they can use good judgment and make healthy decisions in their future. Being able to make healthy choices means that they need to learn to question authority at times. Of course, any questioning needs to be done in a respectful manner. Questioning rules can also give opportunity to teach adolescents the reasons for the rules. Rules are really about safety, fairness, and right and wrong. Rules are not simply there to take away a teenager's fun, but they don't know that. Expect rules to be challenged. The way a parent responds to these challenges can teach respect for others and that choices have consequences. But more than this, a parent prepares a child to make healthy rules for themselves and protect themselves in the future. Don't expect blind compliance. Most teenagers aren't going to give blind compliance anyway. It is wise to raise children so that when they are out in the world on their own, they won't swallow every sales pitch thrown at them. They need to become critical thinkers, questioning what others are trying to convince them of or attempting to get them to do. Our goal in raising teenagers should not be to produce robots that simply comply with every would-be influence without questioning. This blind compliance is neither healthy nor practical, because there will be at times when other people will attempt to use or manipulate them. Blind compliance would make them vulnerable to use and abuse. Number 11. Do respect their privacy. The need for privacy is normal for adolescents, as well as adults. Growing independence and a sense of modesty around others are normal aspects of the adolescent years. Allowing them to close doors and to ask that they be left alone at times are reasonable requests. That is, unless there are signs of other problems, such as drug use or sexual escapades. Under these circumstances, the need for safety overrides their want of privacy. But under normal circumstances, let them close their door and lock the bathroom door. Knock on their door before you enter. Have them do the same for you. Don't violate their space. Allow their room to be their room. Adolescents often become territorial about their rooms. Unless you find new forms of life spawned from food and debris or you can't walk through the room safely without getting injured, don't make your teenager's bedroom a battlefield. Don't rummage through their wallets, purses, or closets unless you have a very good reason to do so. The reason for invading their privacy needs to be based on strong suspicions that they are involved in something that is dangerous. Otherwise, give them their privacy. Allowing them time alone to be with their thoughts and feelings is needed in adolescence. However, also be ready to give them support and be with them when they crawl out of their cave and need you. Number 12. Do allow for independence. As children get older, it is logical to give them more freedom while also increasing their responsibility. Many parents find it hard to let go. However, the adolescent years involve parents taking risks. These risks should be calculated. When it comes to allowing teenagers to go places, be with friends, and engage in certain activities, there are always risks. However, it is better to guide them in facing these freedoms while they are still under our influence than having them deal with these choices alone, later as adults without adequate preparation. Important choices shouldn't be made without practice. No responsible athlete, actor, or teacher would dare try to perform without being prepared. When the time comes for a young person to make their own choices, they should be prepared as well. Undisciplined teens become inadequate adults who make big mistakes. Consequences at that point in life can be grave. Don't thwart their growth. Allow for teenagers to stretch their wings. Permit them to gain experience in making decisions and accepting more responsibility as they enjoy new freedoms. However, if in so doing you find that they are unable to handle the responsibility that goes with freedom, you still have options. When teenagers can't manage the responsibility that goes with independence, pull in the reins. Cancel the freedom for the time being, until you feel they are able to tackle it and succeed. Be prepared to give them an opportunity to show you that they are ready for another chance. More freedom should include more accountability. After limiting independence for a time, parents can try giving freedom again. This is after they have seen indications that their adolescent can handle it. Managing increased freedom by requiring more responsibility is necessary for health, learning, and personal growth. Conclusion. Adolescence is that training period between childhood and adulthood. It is full of pitfalls, but also opportunities for growth and learning. The 12 do's and don'ts offer insight into the adolescent mind, what to expect and what to do. Teenagers want respect and see themselves as grown up. They are on their way to maturity, but they still need protection from their immaturity. Only parents can give them this protection. Their exposure to adult issues only hastens their natural desire for independence and freedom. Too little freedom and a teenager will rebel. Give them too much freedom and they will crash and burn. Parenting a teenager requires know-how, action, and reaching a delicate balance between allowing freedom and providing restraint. Good parenting includes providing adequate safety. Many years ago, Eric Berne, a doctor and author, spoke of transactional analysis. He wrote about parents and children and the way they tend to relate. He described parents as having a choice, as either relating to their child as a critical parent, as a healthy adult, or as a child themselves. Acting as a critical parent only frustrates and emotionally injures our children. Often this approach takes away a child's choices and the reasonable amount of control they should have to make some of their own decisions. However, relating as an adult means maintaining the generation gap, as well as maintaining parental authority. This can be done while still respecting and encouraging individuality, maintaining safety, and allowing for exploration. As a child grows and becomes an adult, their way of relating will change from child to parent, or even child to adult to adult. This change hopes for mutual respect and encouragement while recognizing independence. Unfortunately, there are many parents who have difficulty changing to the adult-to-adult relationship when their children are grown. There are also a few parents who operate more from a child-to-child perspective. These are the parents who want to be the buddy. Buddies don't have authority. Buddies are more concerned with not offending their friend than they are in protecting or teaching them. While a parent can be a friend while still maintaining their parental role, they cannot be a buddy. Being a buddy to a child is more about the parent's needs, that is, affection and acceptance, than a child's needs. Any adult who is being a buddy to a child cannot be a true parent to them. Be prepared to make the jump from an adult-to-child relationship to an adult-to-adult relationship when your child grows up. At that point, you can shed much of the parental responsibility and be more of a buddy. Once a child becomes an adult, they can look out for themselves. However, until then, the parenting years involve the need to protect what we value most.